Chapter 8. Nanny's Secret. It had been several weeks since Flance had arrived at Morningstar Castle, and everything she'd heard on the day of her arrival was true. She and Tulip were up in the king's highest tower, looking down on all of Tulip's gentlemen callers, as Nanny liked to say. There were at least 45 of them, all waiting for the slightest glimpse of Tulip. The guardsmen had gone out more than once to get the young men to stop fighting with each other, reminding them all that the princess would not care for brutish men who brawled like common drunkards at the local tavern. It didn't seem to help matters. The men kept vying for Tulip's attention, some of them in more unique ways than others. One of the men, for example, stood out from the rest. He was wearing a sky blue velvet frock coat with gold embellishments on his lapels and white lace ruffles at his sleeves and cravat. He played a lute decorated with lovely matching ribbons, which he used to compose songs about Tulip's beauty. Her skin is like honey, her eyes like the sky, her hair is like sunshine. Tulip slammed the window before she could hear the rest of the song. This is just too much, Nanny, really. It's getting rather ludicrous, don't you think? She asked, frustrated with the endless parade of suitors. It really is, my dear. What possesses them? She quickly caught herself and added, Not that your beauty shouldn't command such attention, my dear. Tulip sighed. I wish I knew. It's like a mania. Something has come over these men and taken hold of their senses. I'd feel sorry for them if it weren't so annoying. I agree, my dear. I think we should call upon Circe. Call her? How do you suppose we do that? I have my ways, my dear. You just leave it to old Nanny and Miss Flance here. Flance gave Nanny a puzzled look and let out an inquisitive meow, wondering what the old woman had in mind. Flance, what do you want with her? Tulip asked. You get queerer every day, Nanny. Nanny gave Tulip a kiss on the cheek as she scooped up Flance and took her off to their mysterious errand. Come on, my dear girl, I should like your company for a while. It wasn't customary by any means for Nanny to be down in the kitchen, searching for this thing or that, and it was clear the chef was rather put out when Nanny suggested he take a nice afternoon walk. You're looking a little peaky, dear. You really should spend more time in the sun. It will do you some good to get out and about. Perhaps a walk? The chef grumbled, leaving the little cakes he had lined up to decorate sitting on the marble counter, not wanting to argue with Nanny. Nanny set out a saucer of heavy cream for Flance while she got a few things together. Flance knew at once what she was up to. Nanny intended to do a scrying spell. Flance had seen her witches do it many times in the years she'd spent with them. She heard Nanny in the pantry muttering to herself while gathering the herbs she needed. Everyone thinks Nanny is a silly old woman, but she knows a trick or two. Flance watched Nanny break an egg into a wooden bowl. It floated on the surface of the water like a strange eye. But that's what it was, wasn't it? An eye. A way to see into the world. The sisters had already tried finding Circe that way, but perhaps Nanny's magic would find her where the sisters could not. Flance was pleased that she was right about Nanny's being a witch. That's right, precious, Nanny said to Flance, who was leisurely drinking her cream. And I know who you belong to. But never mind that now. They don't meddle with the likes of me. Not any more. Not after our dealings with the dark fairy. Flance wondered, for the briefest of moments, if Nanny could read her thoughts, but she decided the old woman was simply talking to herself, as she often did, and as she continued to do then. It's time to find their little sister, Circe. We need to know what's come over these men. Clearly they're enchanted, and it's not by your witches. It's someone else's magic, and I don't like it one bit. Flance didn't blink an eye at Nanny's mention of knowing her mistresses. Other witches didn't frighten her, especially sweet elderly witches who'd lost most of their powers. Hopefully, Nanny would remember the proper incantation to call up Circe. Flance knew it, of course, but had no means of conveying it to Nanny. Not any that she intended to use anyway, not unless Nanny really could read her thoughts. Flance's magic was unlike the witches. It took long stretches of time to recharge. It sometimes took Flance years to recover after using her magic, so she had to choose very carefully the precise time in which to employ it. Nanny gave Flance a funny look, like she knew what she was thinking, and it made Flance wonder, "Oh, yes, precious kitty, I can hear you. Old Nanny isn't as batty as everyone thinks. Give me the spell, girl. It won't cost you anything to think." Flance wondered if Nanny had been skillfully hiding her powers all that time, or if they'd recently been coming back to her. "Ever since you arrived, dear, they've been coming back to me like the divine winds. I suppose I should thank you." "You're welcome," Flance thought. Then, because she had learned to conceal her thoughts from her witches long before, she thought to herself, quite secretly, mind you, that this was a very curious situation, one that needed some attention and investigation. Clearly, Nanny had been growing more powerful by the moment, and somehow Flance was the cause. But even more important, Nanny remembered some dealings with the cat's mistresses and the dark fairy, whom her witches seemed to fear, but she couldn't think of that right then. She needed to focus on finding Circe, not only to make her witches happy, but to see if she had any part in the spell that had overtaken all the young lads camped out on King Morningstar's castle grounds. It did seem like Circe's magic. That was the sort of thing she would do, try to bring about a match for Tulip. But it was getting out of hand. It wasn't like Circe to let her magic run amok, and that was what bothered Flance most. If Circe had cast the spell, she would know its outcome and she would come at once to mend things, unless something was detaining her. "Yes, my precious, my thoughts exactly. I'm worried Circe may be in trouble as well." The old woman and the cat's conversation was interrupted by the clamor of a couple of castle guards running into the kitchen. The scene was rather ridiculous, really, the men standing there wide-eyed looking at Nanny and Flance, wondering what to make of an old woman chatting with a cat while clearly in the middle of some witchery. It was remarkable that one man was able to bark out their orders. "Up! To the tower at once!" he stammered. "Here now, young man, I won't have you or anyone ordering me to towers, or to anywhere else for that matter." "Excuse me, Mum, but the Queen commands it. The castle is under siege."